Frantic calls from Simcoe on the radio.
Smashed, bullets and blood all over the place.
The first question I asked him was, where did he get the gun?
Within an hour, I never seen so many police cars.
He was driving by us, took a good look at us and sort of glared at us.
I was sure he's coming back for me.
I was disturbed by it, and I have been since.
Herbert McAuliffe was waiting in his car approximately 2:45, Wednesday afternoon, June 21st, 1950, about a quarter of an hour before closing time, because the bank was going to be closing in a few minutes, and I expect he was probably waiting until the last customer had left.
I thought he was a farm worker. Seemed to have what looked like one of our checks in his hand.
He wasn't really wearing a disguise. He was wearing a sun helmet, sunglasses, had a blue suit coat on, a rather dirty shirt, work shirt with pinstripes.
Okay, this would have been where the cage was, just opposite the vault door.
This is a stick up. Get in the corner. Face the wall.
He was quite gruff and but cool. He had one gun stuck in his belt, and he had another gun that he was directing people with.
He didn't talk a lot, but when he talked, you knew he meant business.
Stop looking at me. Turn around and face the wall.
He started to back up with this cage. Then I remembered about the alarm, and then in the meantime he said, told you to get back out of the cage. So backed up and left the cage and went over and stood with the rest in the corner.
Any false moves, and no one will get hurt.
At that moment, he was distracted. Someone was at the door. Pulled this gun out, a second gun.
Over there. Over there.
Well, it looks much the same as it did, with the shelves where the ledgers were kept. The safe was here, and he could see the safe from where he stood at the door.
Saw a lot of people, and some I knew, go into the bank, and no one seemed to be coming out, but I didn't think anything of it until the buzzer sounded. And so I turned down and I said, "What's the buzzer? Is that the bank buzzer?" And she said, "Yes, it's in the garage across the street."
He said, "Did you do any talking about this after?" He said, "I'll come back and kill you."
Al Thompson threw bundles of 20s up on the upper shelves behind the ledgers, hoping that Herbert McAuliffe wouldn't spot him doing that.
But then he saw us do it. Or he saw Hal do it. I didn't do it, Hal did it. And he told me to get them. And I said, well, I didn't see him do it.
That's all right, young lady, don't you worry.
So finally I said, well, no one's coming out and it's been a long time. I think we better get the police. So I go to the phone to try to get the police. And the party line, and they couldn't get Central, we couldn't get the police.
Herbert McAuliffe was finished with the robbery, so he took his 2 guns, ordered everyone into the vault.
Come on, hurry it up.
I don't know whether he would have shot a person or whether he would have just shot, but he certainly was prepared to do something to get what he wanted.
Out came the robber with the money in the bag, and
Bottom of the bag fell out. So what he did, he opened his door and scooped the money out. Started throwing it into the car.
He only got slightly over $20,000 when he took off.
just about that time, out of the bank came Art Learman and Bill Godden. And they said, where did he go? So we told them where he went. And they said, well, we'll try and keep him in sight until you get the police.
So what happened then, Art Learman got out from behind the wheel of the car, looked in the back seat, pulled the rifle out and sat in the passenger's seat. And Bill Godden slid in behind the wheel. They left out of Langton in pursuit of the bank bandit.
We heard a shot, someplace a little noise. It was hard to tell from the noise of the mill whether it was what it was. But then when the car that was being pursued went around the corner, there was a shot fired there from, I can't tell you exactly where or when, but when they had a little better view of him, they took a shot at him there.
I heard a shot coming from that way, where that car is. And I looked up, and I seen these two vehicles coming. They were going quite fast. It was very dusty. And the first vehicle lost control, and he went in the ditch right over there. And the second car stopped right behind him. There was a man in the second car with a rifle or a shotgun leaning out the window like this. And within 5-10 seconds of them stopping, I heard this machine gun and smoke coming out of the back of the first car. The man holding the firearm in the second car dropped his arm and fell into the car. I dropped to the ground and I seen this. I looked up at different intervals, and I would see a man walking back and forth from the first to the second car. And one of these times, he was standing beside the second car, and I heard 4 or 5 more shots. He still walked back and forth, and the last time I seen him, he was crossing the fence, going towards the woods to the south. I stayed where I was probably another 10 minutes, I don't know. And I started to crawl out of the field, going that way. And I was kind of nervous. I was making a lot of dust at that time. I was really quite nervous. And I ran home.
How old were you then?
I was 16.
There was frantic calls from Simcoe on the radio that there'd been a bank robbery in Langton. And also 2 cars, a car had gone in the ditch on the King Lake side road in Norfolk County. And that there was 2 men in another car that were dead. And when I arrived in Langton, it'd be about 3 o'clock. Immediately a flock of people came around me and all talking at once about the description of this man, what happened. He went this way, he went that way. And I said, wait a minute, slow down, one at a time. I got about 7 different descriptions of this here bandit.
The autopsy reports indicate that the 2 men were not killed by the fire from the Thompson submachine gun. They were instead killed by pistol shots fired from either window. 2 into Bill Godden and 5 into Art Learman.
There was a news report on the Buffalo station about a bank holdup in southern Ontario. And I never thought a lot about that. But as the time went on in the afternoon, I wondered where they were. And then I seen the police car drive in, and I knew that something had happened.
Because he'd gone to the bank that day.
Yes. Him and Mr. Lehrman went to the bank to arrange for money for harvest.
My sister and I were coming home from school on the school bus, and about, I guess, 2 stops from home, my mother's car approached the bus, and the bus driver said, "Oh, your mother's here, and probably wants to pick you up." So we got into the car, and my mother simply said there'd been an accident. I don't think she was aware of the nature of what had happened just yet. And then we drove from there to the site of near King Lake. I remember my mother got out of the car, and I think I did, and someone walked towards us. I can't remember who it was now, but just said that it'd be better if my mother didn't go any further.
I did not know the full circumstance until I got there, as I recall. And then I was certainly disturbed at seeing these two young men, one that I knew a little bit, Mr. Lehrman, dead. Smashed, bullets and blood all over the place.
Within an hour, I never seen so many police cars, so much activity, people. My dad and I, we both seen the bodies of Mr. God and Mr. Lehrman. It was something I'll never forget, I know. The family knew Mr. Lehrman. We knew it was him. And we really felt bad for the families.
People were anxious and very aggressive, because it was such a tragedy, and everybody knew these people so well that it was like losing one of their own family type of thing, So people were anxious, and they gathered, and they armed themselves, shotguns, rifles, whatever. They were organized, well organized,
His feelings were running very high, and all of Art's friends and a lot of neighbors were intent on tracking this man down. So I joined the group for about, I suppose, 2.5 or 3 hours, looking fence rows and old buildings and just generally trying to find McAuliffe.
Well, after I got back up there with my gun, we took off with the OPP, and we were in Burwell about 15 minutes later. I said, "What the hell are we doing here? This guy's on foot." He says, "I want to be just as far away from that character as I can get."
Who said that?
Police officer.
If he'd come up with his hands up, I suppose he probably would have been all right. If he'd made some attempt to run or show signs of aggression, he probably would have been killed.
Were people fearful of getting shot by this guy? Did you think that he had the machine gun when he was out there?
Well, I think most people believed that he still had the machine gun, and certainly there was some concern.
Everybody knew how to handle a gun, and they were all hunters and farmers usually know how to handle a gun.
The paper sent down their first string reporter, photographer teams to cover this, and it pretty well pushed every other bit of news off the front pages for about 3 days. This manhunt had all the elements of a great newspaper story.
The press, they were very active. They chased us around all over. Even in the middle of the night, they came to Marriott's house and took pictures, and the kids were sleeping.
The place was crawling with reporters from the Toronto media.
I can't remember the exact numbers, but there seemed to be more reporters and photographers than there were police.
Well, for the next several days, everyone wanted to see where the 2 killings occurred. People just wanted to come in and gawk.
The description we had over the police radio that he was a dark-complected guy that looked like an Italian. So if he'd walked out that night, he wouldn't have been caught because he was fair-complected with red hair and freckles. Didn't look like the description that we had over the police radio at all that we were looking for.
Nobody got in the bush. They didn't want nobody except a policeman if they had, wanted to go in there, but they didn't want to go in there neither very bad. They just didn't know just what that fella had with him, that their machine gun was gone, and they knew that, so.
Well, I remember a lot of commotion, a lot of confusion, a lot of police cars, which we didn't normally see on country roads in those days, a lot of police and a lot of guns, which was all something you didn't see an awful lot of in 1950 in rural Ontario. If my memory serves me right, I'm really not certain whether I was protecting the homestead or whether I was actually hunting for who they were hunting for.
We could really control our own people, but we couldn't control these people because we never knew where they were. And they were running around with rifles and shotguns and all this stuff. So, no, you had more of a problem being shot by these people than McAuliffe. So.
Oh, people were really upset. They knew that he would be a desperate man, and they didn't know just what he would do next. The people, they locked their doors, and they were asked by the police to put their keys in the house, not leave them in the ignition or in the garage. I did just the opposite. I put the keys in the car. I also had an old pickup truck. I put the keys in the pickup truck, and I felt that if he wanted one of my vehicles, I didn't want him coming to the door with a loaded gun, demanding them.
Oh, they were mad, yes. They were good and mad, and good and scared, too. They were scared, and even our police officers was scared stiff after it got dark. And like a cow or a horse whinny and a cow, bellow or something like that, they weren't used to that. Some of them from the city, they just scared to death.
Okay, Bert, tell me where you found him that night.
Went over there in the corner, moved some hay, and and I took off. Right through that door and right to the house.
And you used the ladder when you went down?
No, just jumping feet going in the air.
So that scared you pretty well?
Well.
Did you think it was the man that they were looking for?
Yeah, and I thought he had a gun, so I went before he got too far behind me, but I guess he wasn't too far behind me.
There was a lineup of men all through here. This section was all covered all the way through.
And we had penetrated, I don't know how many feet or how many yards, when I heard someone shout, "There he goes."
I told him to come out of the shack with his hands up, or else I'd shoot.
ask yourself why your dad went after him?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I asked myself and regretted the fact, certainly that he did. My dad loved life. He loved his neighbors. He loved the community, and had a deep sense, I think, of right and wrong. And I think it was a spur-of-the-moment thing.
Had I been there, likely I'd have been done the same thing. And it turned out to be a rather foolish thing to do, and I guess as it always is. But however, they also might never have caught him. And I guess money isn't worth two men's lives.
He was only 31, and my mother lost a husband. His family lost my dad. My sister and I lost our father. And it doesn't end. It doesn't end at that point in time. It just escalates as the years go by. The loss is just there forever.
We got information from Mrs. Lazur that she'd seen this article about the bank robbery in the paper and a photograph of the accused, and she advised the police that this man was named West, was her boarder named McAuliffe.
About 5 days after the capture of Frank West, Constable Leonard Chambers and Inspector Alex McLeod executed a search warrant and broke the lock on this garage door.
It's a counterfeit 50-cent, Canadian's 50-cent piece. And it was found in McAuliffe's garage.
This photograph shows two coins. One of them is the counterfeit coin. The other is a real 50-cent piece.
Which one is it?
Actually, the coin on the left is the counterfeit. I've looked at it very closely. There really is no difference at all. Herbert McAuliffe had set up his counterfeiting operation with his lathes, buffer equipment, and over 6,000 unfinished counterfeited coins. Now, part of the reason probably why he robbed the Langton Bank was to get the silver to coat those coins.
Viewing his workshop there, it was fantastic, the things he had in there. I can't describe everything that was in there, but the machines that he was making. He had to be a very intelligent man. He didn't need to go robbing banks to make a living. He could have made a fantastic living, that man.
I received a call from the jail governor. Said he'd like to see a lawyer. So I went over and I saw McAuliffe.
What was that like, your first meeting with him?
Well, it was very strange. I was interested to see what type of individual he was. He was one of the quietest individuals that I ever met who was accused and facing trial. Quiet in producing or suggesting or alleging what his defense might be or should be or could be.
When I saw Herbie, the first question I asked him was, where did he get the gun?
What did he say?
And he said, it's not very long ago I had a gun in my hand, and I could kill anybody I wanted to. I was told to kill.
And where was that?
I said, when do you mean? He said, when I joined the Army. They put a gun in my hand and said, you can kill who you like. It's a war. And I said, well, and I guess they taught you how to kill. He said, yes, the Army taught me how to kill. I really couldn't believe that he did it. I thought it must have been somebody else. They must have made a mistake.
I think I had a kind of a preconceived idea that I wasn't going to like him. But that changed after talking to him and his reaction to experiences in his life and the way he had been treated as a young person. My attitude towards him changed.
I wrote to his father that I was a young, inexperienced lawyer, and I suggested that McAuliffe, the accused, required the benefit of the top criminal lawyers in the province of Ontario.
The father was a very distant person that I could see. But maybe it was a cover-up because of the particular circumstance. Maybe that was the only way he could handle it. This is my son who's killed somebody. So
I can recall the father saying I wouldn't spend 5 cents, a nickel, for his defense.
His lawyer did his best, but there are letters in the files that I have of trying to get funds from the father, because the father had the money, and he just refused. Even the Knights of Columbus wrote to my grandfather, begging him to give some money, and he refused.
What kind of person could commit this kind of inhuman act and shoot 2 people in cold blood? When he'd gone to the car, I think he had to see that they were unarmed, and you know, why didn't he just leave? I have to think that he was, you know, an evil person with, you know, very little respect for other people. That his way was the right way.
I don't know of any record of where he was shooting at the 2 people until his car was ditched and he had no place to go. So it looks to me like he was trying to save his life.
If you're cornered and you had something in your hands that you could handle yourself with, use it. That's what I do. Or in the Army, that's what they teach you that. The poor bugger, he's cornered, and these guys come after the cops and all that after him. What are you gonna do? I'd shoot my way out too. Right now I would.
There's no doubt he was panicky. It wasn't because he was a trained soldier. That was a lot of bull as far as I'm concerned. He went into a panic. He was going to get caught. And by God, he wasn't going to get caught. He would wipe these 2 people out and beat it.
I always thought that Herbert had been dishonorably discharged. It was written up in the papers at the time of the court case, because I've read the records back there. In fact, everything in his record showed he was a good soldier, that he was well respected, he did a good job. He moved up to staff sergeant.
Well, I don't remember my mother. Of course, she died in 1918. The soldiers were bringing the flu back from overseas, First World War, and she got the flu and then developed pneumonia from that and died. Left 2 little ones, and she was pregnant with another child.
She was so ill that she took them to bed with her. And being a mother, I can understand how that would happen. So she had one on either side of her. And she died like that. And the kids were with her, with a dead mother, for they don't know how long. It was at least 2 or 3 days. The milk bottles were gathering up on the doorstep, and the milkman became suspicious. And he came in and heard a baby crying, which would have been Herbie. And he came upstairs, and that's how he found them.
As a youngster, he got more loving than I did, because he was a very, very affectionate child, very affectionate. He was the easygoing kid. He would do anything they told him. He never disobeyed. My stepmother was kind of, when Dad married again, she was a bit jealous, you see. And if she got near me, he would walk over and stand beside me at the table. He'd get up from the table and go and stand beside me in case she was going to slap me. After my father married again, he and I had to stick together.
Tell me about the birdhouse.
My father hit him over the head with it because he was so angry because he had made me a birdhouse. My father was very, very jealous of Herbie being affectionate with me.
There were a lot of other incidents that I was told about by the neighbor who had to call the Children's Aid over and over and over when they were there. And I mean, the 2 of them basically ran away from home. He, I think, was 16 and she 17.
Of course, I was not aware of his childhood and what transpired during his childhood. Had I been, in all probability, I would have requested a psychiatric examination and report.
Yeah.
The only defense he tried was the McAuliffe had to defend himself from being shot by returning fire. But it was quite obvious from the evidence there was only 2 shots fired. There was 2 empty shells in Lehman's car, and after that the 22 could not be fired. It jammed.
The fresh pursuit, you're pursuing a criminal person whom you believe on reasonable probable grounds has committed a serious criminal offense, and therefore you're entitled to attempt to apprehend him. And that neutralized the self-defense.
What was his demeanor in court?
Very subdued, never said a word. Worried when hearing the evidence that was coming out against him. No, he was a very worried man, very worried man.
The thing is, he was a very nice, polite fellow. But I mean, and we even remember going to church to La Salette one time with him, I and my brother. And he had Dad's car, so Dad must have really trusted him.
What did your parents remember about Herbert McAuliffe?
He was a very quiet man. He didn't talk to them too much, but to me, at 13 years old, he seemed to be my friend. My dad showed me the Toronto Star, and he says, "Who's this on the front page?" I looked, and I said, "Oh, that's Red." I said, "Why? What's the matter?" He says, "He robbed a bank." And I said, No, not that man.
Well, first of all, he shouldn't have been robbing a bank. Because nobody can condone anything like that. I think it's wrong, very wrong, that he killed 2 people. But at the same time, as I've looked at this case, I think the 2 victims, the one in particular who initiated the chase, also have a responsibility in what happened to them.
McAuliffe, have you anything to say why the sentence of the court should not be imposed upon you according to law?
No, my lord.
You have been found guilty of murder by the jury. And I have no choice as to the sentence to be imposed. The sentence of the court is that you be taken from this place to the place from whence you came, and there to be kept in close confinement until the 19th day of December, 1950. And upon that date, you'll be taken to the place of execution, and there be hanged by the neck until you are dead. And may God have mercy on your soul.
I think my blood turned to ice. It was a real eerie feeling to see that man sentenced, and he turned just as white as white.
In a way, you felt sorry for the guy, but you knew he'd done wrong and he had to pay the price for it.
It's about 50-50 with me. And so you give the guy the benefit of the doubt, and he serves his time in the penitentiary. Robbery was his crime.
He could have got out with a submachine gun and said, "You guys, get out of that car. I'm taking over the car," and he could have took off in their car. But no, he murdered them in cold blood, as far as I'm concerned.
One of the things you read about in the old articles is that he was an animal, that he was a transient farm worker. So there was a class thing there, that the deceased, one of the deceased was a very wealthy gentleman and well-liked in the community. And they had to demonize him and make him less than human to do that. And I think that inspired the kind of anger and hate that's still there today.
People were outraged at what he'd done. I think it was as much to satisfy their desire for revenge.
Did Herbert McAuliffe ever tell you that he did it?
No.
You never discussed that with him?
No.
Or you never asked him either?
No, I didn't.
I said, "Did you really do it?" I said, "I don't believe it." He said, "Yes, I did." He said, "Don't look anywhere else."
As I recall, the only thing he said, the war taught me to kill. When I got into a tight spot, and I think that's a quote, I killed. I think he believed in God, and I think he was sorry that he had killed these persons. I think he was sorry that he had hurt so many other persons, the families and so forth, and hurt members of his own family.
And he said to me, well, never mind, honey, he says, someday we'll meet again. So I believe we will meet again.
To my dear sister, Irene. Irene, I'm crying for the first time, I believe, since we were kids together.
It says right on the top, 5 p.m., December the 18th, 1950. Just a matter of 6 hours before his execution.
Let's see the signature.
And you notice he had kisses beside I love you. Tonight I'm going to die. I am a man, Irene. I'm going to die like one. If anyone ever asks you how your brother died, tell them just that. Father Boyer tells me I will be buried here in St. Mary's Cemetery in Simcoe. I think I will feel lonesome there among strangers far from Elmont.
I would like to have
I would like to have been buried in Elmont.
Near Grandma, where you and Mary could visit the grave. I have $78 that you and Mary can divide between you. Goodbye, Irene. I love you, Brother Herbie.
I said Mass for him at 12 o'clock. And then he was taken out and over to this room. And again, the dullness and drabness.
How did he look like? Like a man that had 5 minutes to live.
What's that look like?
Well, I can't describe it. The end. Hopelessness. Hopelessness.
And I had stood at the top of the upper room. He wanted me to hold him, which I did. And then he fell. So that it's a circumstance you don't forget, but it's a circumstance you don't want to remember either.
Bang, 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 boom! It hit the lever and it was gone, just like that. Yeah. For the time he came into my view from down the hall to my left, from the time he went down that trapdoor, wouldn't be 5 minutes. Wouldn't be 5 minutes. That hangman. Then everybody that viewed it walked up to the scaffolding and looked down. I remember that. Everyone looked down.
The cell above is where there were a number of people who witnessed the execution. They were there, along with the hangman. And Herbert McAuliffe dropped through to the cell below, where Dr. McIntosh was in attendance.
The first execution was a bit botched by the fact that the stylized process on the second cervical vertebra had failed to mash into the lower part of the cerebellum. And the point is, he died as much, in my opinion, from strangulation. Undoubtedly, there was some brain damage done, but...
He didn't die right away.
Oh, no, well, no, his heart beat, I would guess, for maybe 10 10 or 12 minutes after he hit the end of the rope.
It was true that it was a botched job, that they basically tortured him to death. It was not fast. It took several minutes, 16 minutes for him to die, and he would have had to suffocate in order to die.
I was asked if I would be a pallbearer, and so the cortege formed up outside the jail, and we proceeded out here. When we arrived, there was quite a crowd of people surrounding the place. I believe most of them perhaps followed the cortege from the jail.
But again, when we went out to the cemetery, there must have been 50, 75, 100 people out there, yelling and so forth and so forth. And some group served coffee and the like of that. Well, I thought it was a terribly, terribly ghoulish thing.
Joseph Herbert McAuliffe was duly executed in the Norfolk County Gaol. This is a satisfactory climax to a most brutal crime. Okay?
So how did you feel about it after it was done?
I don't feel at all.
That night?
Went home, went to bed. No.
Did it bother you at all?
Hey?
Did it bother you at all?
No, didn't bother me one bit. Didn't bother me one bit, no.
I did not anticipate going to the gallows with a young man and seeing him die in front of me. I was disturbed by it, and I have been since.
In the Bible, it tells you an eye for an eye, and he did take 2 lives. So
you think that that was the right thing to happen that day?
I think so. I'd have to say so.
The court should have it set up so they can punish you for what you've done. If you've done something bad, well, you should get something bad.
I thought it was justified, very much so. Yeah, yeah.
And
I don't think anything less than that would have satisfied anybody at the time.
When I went back to do some research after 46 years, there is still an overreaction to the whole case.
Capital punishment is supposed to be a deterrent to the crime of murder. I don't think it works. Because on this one experience, if you can make a universal statement from one incident, the concept of being hanged didn't enter into his consciousness or thought in any fashion whatsoever. None whatsoever.
I have ambivalent feelings about capital punishment. Generally, I oppose it, but I can't say that I would feel that way if somebody I love or in my family had been the victim of a murder.
Certain people are basically evil, and as long as they're allowed to roam free or to live, they will continue to practice their evil ways. If you do away with the murder, he's not going to kill anyone again.
If he'd have found some person who really loved him and got through to him, I think that he could have been rehabilitated.
If what happened that June of 1950 would have happened in today's time, that Mr. McAuliffe would be free today, and I find that totally unacceptable. That, that suddenly a crime has been committed. We must look into the welfare of the person that has committed the crime. We must rehabilitate this person, et cetera, and all the losses that I referred to earlier, the loss of a father, a husband, friends, and so on. None of that seems to carry any weight anymore.
What about the victims in this case?
I feel very badly for them. They did not have their fathers, and now their grandfathers. And as this generation, I would like to say I'm sorry for what happened. And their lives were forever changed. But at the same time, so was mine, and my brothers, and my mother's. And so then in a crime like this, where capital punishment or whatever, there were victims all around. And that's the tragedy.
I'm not 100% opposed to capital punishment. The problem is, where do you draw the line? And where do you say so much? And if it's over the line, then there's execution. If not, then it's life imprisonment. I don't know. I don't know.